heart of a sleepy suburb, where the sun bakes the streets and the sound of children playing echoes through the air. There's an ice cream truck that everyone talks about, but no one really knows. It was a scorching July afternoon, the kind where you could fry an egg on the sidewalk, and I was hanging out at my friend Jake's place. We were bored, playing video games, when we heard the familiar jingle of an ice cream truck. We raced outside, cash in hand, ready for a cool treat. But something was off. The truck, a faded, rusty van with peeling paint, crept down the street. It didn't have the usual bright, happy images of ice cream cones and smiling kids. Instead, it was just plain, almost ghostly. The jingle wasn't the cheerful tune you'd expect either. It was slow, almost like a lullaby, but warped and out of tune. Jake hesitated. Man, that's kinda creepy. Yeah, I agreed. But it's just an ice cream truck, right? As the truck rolled to a stop, the driver, a gaunt man with sunken eyes and a greasy mop of hair, leaned out. "What'll it be, boys?" His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in years. We ordered our usual, a couple of rocket pops. But when he handed them over, they were soft, like they'd been melted and refrozen. The colors were dull, not the vibrant red, white, and blue we were used to. I remember feeling a chill, despite the heat. That night, I had this weird dream. The ice cream truck was there, parked outside my house, playing that twisted jingle. I could hear the music even after I woke up, faintly, like it was stuck in my head. The next day, things got weirder. Kids around the neighborhood started talking about the truck. They said the driver was asking strange questions, like if they were alone or when their parents got home. Some said they saw him taking pictures. Everyone felt uneasy, but no one did anything. It was just an ice cream truck after all. Then my little sister Emma came home one day, pale and shaken. She said the ice cream man offered her a free ice cream if she'd come into the truck to pick it out. She ran away, but it scared her. Scared me too. I told my parents, and they called the cops. But when they came around, the truck was nowhere to be found. It was like it vanished into thin air. The police said they'd keep an eye out, but there wasn't much they could do. It was just a truck selling ice cream, they said. But it wasn't just a truck, not to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was going to happen. I started having nightmares every night, always the same. The truck outside, the eerie music, and the sense of dread. A few days later, Jake and I decided to follow the truck. We hopped on our bikes and trailed it at a distance. It roamed the streets aimlessly, like it was searching for something or someone. We followed it to the edge of town, to an old, abandoned lot overgrown with weeds. The truck stopped there, and the driver got out. He opened the back of the truck, and that's when we saw it. The inside was a mess. Rusty tools, dirty rags, and what looked like cages. My heart sank. We hightailed it out of there and went straight to the police. This time, they listened. They found the truck abandoned in the lot, but the driver was gone. Inside, they found what we saw and more, lists of names, all kids from our neighborhood, and photos, too many photos. They never caught the guy. He just disappeared, like a ghost. The truck was impounded, and life in our suburbs slowly returned to normal. But things weren't the same for me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. It stayed with me, long after the truck was gone. So, that's my story. The story of the ice cream truck that wasn't just an ice cream truck. It's a warning, I guess. Not everything is as innocent as it seems. Not even in the sunniest, sleepiest suburbs. Growing up in the suburbs, my childhood was like a scene straight out of a feel-good movie. Summers were filled with bike rides, hide and seek with neighborhood kids, and the ultimate joy, the arrival of the ice cream truck. Among them, Meister Frosty was my absolute favorite. I remember being quite young, probably around 5 or 6, when I first heard the whimsical tune of Mr. Frosty's truck. It was like magic. I'd rush to my mom, eyes gleaming, begging for a few dollars, then scamper outside, my heart racing as I tried to flag down the truck. Fast forward to when I was 7, a significant year for me, mainly because of one particular incident. My mom was out that day, probably running errands or at a book club meeting. My dad, who was always the more relaxed parent, was home with me. However, he needed to run to the store quickly. "I'll be back in a flash," he said, leaving me alone for the first time. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, sitting in the living room, the TV blaring with an episode of SpongeBob. Then, as if on cue, I heard it, the familiar, cheerful melody of Mr. Frosty's truck. My heart leapt. I sprang up, darted to the kitchen, and used a chair to reach the small basket on the shelf where we kept spare change and a few crumpled dollar bills. Grabbing what I could, I dashed outside, the sound of the truck growing louder. I waved frantically as the truck neared, the driver, an older man with a kind face, pulling over. "What can I get for you, young man?" he asked. My eyes scanned the colorful menu, and I pointed at a specialty cone, a swirl of flavors topped with sprinkles. But my heart sank when he said, "Sorry, buddy, you're a bit short." I explained, a bit embarrassed, that I had no more money since my parents weren't home. His expression changed slightly when I mentioned being home alone. "Oh, you're by yourself?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. I nodded eagerly. What happened next was something straight out of a child's dream, but a parent's nightmare. "Why don't you come inside and make the cone yourself?" he suggested. My eyes widened in awe. I was about to step into the magical realm of the ice cream truck. Without hesitation, I climbed in, and he shut the door behind us. Inside, the truck was a wonderland of flavors and colors. The man showed me how to operate the soft serve machine. "You can be an ice cream man for a day," he chuckled. I was in heaven, pouring ice cream into a cone, utterly oblivious to the world outside. But then, things took a strange turn. After I had my cone in hand, I realized the truck was moving. We were no longer in my neighborhood, but on quieter, unfamiliar streets. The merry tune of Mr. Frosty was absent, replaced by the hum of the engine. I felt a twinge of unease. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice small. The man's tone was stern, a stark contrast to his earlier warmth. "Stay in the back, please," he said sharply. We continued to drive, now in an area that looked abandoned, with dilapidated buildings and overgrown weeds. The truck stopped in front of a particularly run-down structure. He instructed me to follow him out, but before I could move, there was a sudden knock on the door. Mrs. Clara, my next-door neighbor, was on the other side. Her face was etched with worry. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice firm. Before the man could react, she grabbed my arm, pulling me out of the truck. "Stay in my car," she instructed, her tone leaving no room for argument. I watched, confused and scared, as she confronted the man. In an era before the ubiquity of cell phones, Mrs. Clara couldn't immediately call for help. She rushed me to her car, then sprinted to the nearest house. I sat there, my mind racing, trying to piece together what was happening. She returned shortly, talking rapidly into the phone, presumably with the police. The aftermath was a blur. Mrs. Clara drove me home, where police cars and my dad were waiting. I recounted the story to the officers, my voice trembling. It wasn't long before they located the truck and the driver. I had to confirm it was the same man who had taken me into the truck. He was arrested and later sentenced to prison. My parents, trying to protect me, didn't divulge much about him, not even his name. It was a harrowing experience, a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the most innocent of childhood joys. That day left a lasting imprint on me, and is a memory I often try to push to the back of my mind. But it also taught me about the importance of being cautious and the unexpected bravery of neighbors like Mrs. Clara, who stepped in when I needed help the most. As summer approaches, the familiar jingle of the ice cream truck that once brought joy was now a harbinger of dread. This is the story of the summer when everything changed, and how I came face to face with an unspeakable horror. It started innocently enough. The first time I heard the ice cream truck's melody, it was a warm evening in early June. The tune was slightly off-key, a discordant note here and there, but nothing alarming. Kids, oblivious to the subtle change, swarmed the truck, their faces lit with excitement. I watched from my porch, a sense of unease growing within me. As days passed, the music grew increasingly jarring. The once cheerful tune now sounded like a distorted, sinister mockery of its former self. Parents began to notice, whispering concerns to each other. Yet, the truck kept coming, and the children, ever so eager for their frozen treats, seemed unfazed. Curiosity and unease drove me to take a closer look. The driver of the truck was a gaunt figure, his eyes hidden behind dark, reflective sunglasses. His smile, too wide and too bright, never seemed to reach those hidden eyes. There was an air of coldness around him, a stark contrast to the summer heat. One evening, as the truck made its rounds, young Lily Madison from next door went to buy her favorite ice cream. She never came back. The neighborhood erupted in panic. Search parties were formed, but Lily was nowhere to be found. The police questioned the ice cream truck driver, but no evidence was found. Still, whispers of suspicion grew. Despite the fear and the unanswered questions, the children still flocked to the truck. It was as if they were drawn to it, entranced by the now haunting melody. I watched them, a growing sense of dread knotting in my stomach. Something was terribly wrong. I decided to follow the truck one evening. As it meandered through the streets, I kept a safe distance. It finally stopped at the edge of town, in an old, abandoned lot. The driver got out, looked around suspiciously, and slid open a panel at the rear of the truck. Horrified, I watched as he pulled out something large, wrapped in a tarp. My heart raced. I had to know what was inside. As I crept closer, the driver unwrapped the tarp. Beneath it lay a collection of dolls, eerily lifelike in appearance. They were dressed in clothes that belonged to the children of our neighborhood. Among them, I recognized Lily's favorite dress. A nauseating realization hit me. These were not just dolls. They were something else. Overcome with horror and anger, I confronted the driver. He turned, his eerie smile faltering for the first time. In a voice that was chillingly calm, he spoke of his collection, how he admired the innocence and joy of children, and how he wanted to preserve it forever. Lily, he said, was his newest addition. I ran, my mind reeling with terror. Behind me, the driver's laughter echoed. A sound devoid of sanity. I reached my house, locked the doors, and called the police. But when they arrived, the truck and the driver were gone, as if they had vanished into thin air. The neighborhood was never the same. Parents held their children close, the streets now silent, the echoes of laughter long gone. The police searched but found no trace of the truck or the driver. Lily was never found. Years have passed, and life has moved on. But the melody of that ice cream truck still haunts my dreams. Sometimes, on quiet summer nights, I think I hear it in the distance. A ghostly echo of a nightmare I wish I could forget. And I wonder with a shiver if it's just my imagination, or if the melody of madness still roams, searching for its next innocent soul.